He's only 34, but the entire Western world is watching his every move. Who is Captain Ibrahim Traoré? Why is the world watching this young leader from Burkina Faso so closely? In this eye-opening video, they never expected a young captain to change Africa forever, but Traoré is rewriting history. This man just dismantled decades of Western control in Africa, and he's just getting started. One speech, one movement, one man, and Africa's political landscape will never be the same. From soldier to revolutionary icon, how Ibrahim Traoré became the West's biggest challenge. Traoré isn't just leading Burkina Faso, he's waking up an entire continent. What's the real reason global powers fear Captain Ibrahim Traoré? Find out before it's too late. The West called him a threat. Africans call him a hero. Who's really telling the truth? He didn't ask for power, he took it back for his people. The rise of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Is this the man who will unite Africa against foreign control? You need to see what Traoré just did. We dive deep into the story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary military leader who is shaking the foundations of Africa's political power structure. At just 34, Traoré has become a symbol of African resistance against neocolonial control, Western interference, and economic exploitation. From ousting corrupt regimes to reclaiming national resources, he's capturing the attention of not just West Africa, but the entire globe. In this video, you'll discover how Ibrahim Traoré rose to power in Burkina Faso, his bold stance against foreign powers and Western-backed agendas, his vision for a self-sufficient, united Africa, the reactions from African nations, the diaspora, and global powers, why many see him as Africa's new revolutionary icon. Why this matters. Traoré's leadership marks a turning point in the battle for African independence, economic freedom, and sovereignty. As nations across West Africa begin to follow suit, a new era of Pan-Africanism is taking shape. Watch now to understand why Captain Ibrahim Traoré is a name you need to know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content on Africa's transformation and rising leaders. Who is Captain Ibrahim Traoré? Captain Ibrahim Traoré, born in 1988 in Bondakwi, Burkina Faso, is the interim president of Burkina Faso and one of the world's youngest heads of state at 37 years old. A military officer by training, Traoré graduated from the Georges Namono Military Academy and specialized in counterterrorism operations, gaining experience in Burkina Faso's ongoing fight against jihadist insurgencies in the Sahel. His leadership style combines military discipline with ideological fervor, drawing heavily on the legacy of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary president from 1983 to 1987, who championed Pan-Africanism and anti-imperialism before his assassination in a French-backed coup. Traoré's rise to prominence began with his leadership of the September 30, 2022 coup that ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Since assuming power, he has positioned himself as a champion of national sovereignty, rejecting foreign influence and prioritizing local control of Burkina Faso's resources, particularly its gold and agricultural sectors. His decision to forego a presidential salary, live modestly, and engage directly with citizens through speeches and public appearances has bolstered his image as a leader dedicated to the people. Traoré's rhetoric, often invoking Sankara's ideals, emphasizes self-reliance, African unity, and resistance to neocolonialism, making him a polarizing figure both domestically and internationally. Traoré's personal life remains relatively private, but his public persona is marked by simplicity and accessibility. He frequently wears military fatigues or traditional attire, signaling solidarity with ordinary Burkinabe. His background in counterterrorism has informed his security policies, including strengthening the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDF, a civilian militia supporting the military. Despite his youth, Traoré's ability to navigate Burkina Faso's complex political and security landscape has earned him significant domestic support, though critics accuse him of authoritarian tendencies due to his military rule. Why is the world watching this young leader from Burkina Faso so closely? Captain Ibrahim Traoré has captured global attention due to his audacious challenge to the geopolitical status quo and his transformative leadership in a region plagued by instability. Burkina Faso, located in the volatile Sahel, faces jihadist insurgencies, poverty, and historical exploitation by foreign powers. Traoré's bold policies, expelling French troops, nationalizing gold mines, and aligning with non-Western powers like Russia, have disrupted traditional Western dominance in the region, making him a focal point in global power dynamics. His leadership coincides with a broader African movement towards sovereignty, as countries like Mali, Niger, and Chad also push back against Western influence. Traoré's actions, such as banning resource exports to France and the US, have heightened tensions with Western powers, who see their strategic interests in the Sahel, home to critical resources like gold and uranium, threatened. For instance, Burkina Faso's gold production, which accounts for 10% of its GDP, has been redirected to benefit national development, with GDP rising from $18.8 billion in 2022 to $22.1 billion by 2025. This economic progress, achieved amidst security challenges, underscores Traoré's ability to deliver results, drawing scrutiny from both supporters and critics. Globally, Traoré's youth and charisma make him a symbol of Africa's new generation of leaders. His speeches, such as at the Second Russia-Africa Economic and Humanitarian Forum in July 2023, where he praised Russia's non-imperialist approach, have gone viral on platforms like X, with users calling him the Sankara of our time. His defiance of Western-backed agendas, combined with his appeal to African youth, over 60% of Africa's population is under 25, has amplified his influence. However, Western powers, particularly France and the US, view him as a destabilizing force, with US officials like AFRICOM's General Michael Langley warning of Burkina Faso's pivot toward Russia. This geopolitical tug-of-war, coupled with Traoré's domestic reforms, keeps the world's eyes on him. How Ibrahim Traoré rose to power in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré's ascent to power is a story of military opportunism, public discontent, and ideological conviction. Burkina Faso's political landscape has been turbulent, marked by coups, insurgencies, and dissatisfaction with governance. In January 2022, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba led a coup against President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, citing the government's failure to curb jihadist attacks that displaced over 1.5 million people and killed thousands. Damiba's regime, however, struggled with the same issues, failing to restore security or public confidence. On September 30, 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, then a relatively obscure officer leading a unit in the fight against jihadists, orchestrated a second coup, ousting Damiba. The coup was swift, with Traoré's forces seizing key government institutions in Ouagadougou. Supported by the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDF, a civilian militia formed in 2019, Traoré capitalized on widespread frustration with Damiba's perceived ineffectiveness and ties to foreign powers, particularly France. In a televised address, Traoré declared himself interim president, promising to restore security and reclaim Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Traoré's rise was facilitated by his military credentials and populist rhetoric. His experience in counter-terrorism operations gave him credibility among the armed forces, while his invocation of Thomas Sankara's legacy resonated with civilians weary of foreign exploitation. Since taking power, Traoré has consolidated his position through symbolic acts, such as erecting a statue of Sankara at the site of his 1987 assassination, and practical measures, like strengthening the VDF and nationalizing key industries. Despite surviving an alleged assassination attempt in April 2025, reportedly orchestrated from Ivory Coast with foreign backing, Traoré has maintained control, leveraging his military base and public support to navigate challenges. His bold stance against foreign powers and Western-backed agendas. Traoré's leadership is defined by his uncompromising rejection of foreign influence, particularly from Western powers like France and the United States. One of his first acts as interim president was expelling French troops from Burkina Faso in early 2023, ending a military presence that dated back to colonial times. France had maintained bases in Burkina Faso under the guise of counterterrorism, but many Burkinabe viewed this as a neocolonial arrangement that prioritized French access to resources like gold and uranium over local security. Traoré accused France of failing to curb jihadist violence and exploiting Burkina Faso's wealth, a sentiment echoed in his speeches and on platforms like X, where users praised him for breaking the chains of colonialism. Economically, Traoré has nationalized Burkina Faso's gold mines, which produce over 50 tons annually and account for a significant portion of export revenue. By redirecting profits from foreign companies to national development, he has funded infrastructure and social programs, contributing to a GDP increase from $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion. He also imposed bans on resource exports to France and the US, prioritizing local processing to create jobs and retain wealth. These moves have drawn sharp criticism from Western officials, with US AFRICOM's General Michael Langley accusing Traoré of using gold revenues to fund personal security rather than public welfare, a claim Traoré's supporters dismiss as an attempt to discredit him. Reminiscent of narratives used against Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, Traoré's foreign policy has pivoted toward non-Western powers, particularly Russia and, to a lesser extent, China. At the 2023 Russia-Africa Forum, he lauded President Vladimir Putin's initiative to provide free grain to 6 African nations, framing it as a model of partnership without imperialist strings. This alignment has raised alarms in Western capitals, with U.S. Senator Rand Paul warning in 2025 of declining American soft power through USAID as Russia and China fill the void. Traoré's survival of an alleged assassination plot in April 2025, reportedly backed by Western-aligned Ivory Coast, has further fueled perceptions of foreign hostility, prompting global rallies in his support on April 30, 2025. His vision for a self-sufficient, united Africa. Traoré's vision is rooted in Pan-Africanism, emphasizing economic self-reliance, regional unity, and liberation from neocolonial structures. He has called for African nations to achieve food self-sufficiency, arguing that dependence on foreign aid and imports perpetuates vulnerability. His administration has invested heavily in local agriculture, promoting crops like millet and sorghum to reduce reliance on imported wheat and rice. By processing gold and agricultural products domestically, Traoré aims to create jobs and retain wealth, a policy that has boosted Burkina Faso's GDP and reduced unemployment from 5.2% in 2022 to 4.8% by 2025. Cornerstone of his vision is the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, formed with Mali and Niger in July 2024. The AES aims to foster economic integration, collective security, and resistance to foreign interference. At the inaugural AES summit, Traoré outlined plans for a confederation with shared infrastructure, such as regional railways and energy grids, to promote sustainable development. His speeches often echo Sankara's 1984 UN address, where he urged African nations to assume their revolt against external domination. Traoré has criticized the pretense of independence granted in the 1960s, arguing that economic and military dependencies have kept Africa subservient. Traoré's vision extends to cultural and ideological liberation. He has promoted education in local languages and revived Sankara's emphasis on national pride, such as through the Sankara statue and renaming public spaces. His call for African unity has inspired movements across the continent, with leaders in Mali and Niger adopting similar anti-imperialist stances. On X, users praise his vision as a blueprint for Africa's renaissance, with hashtags like #TraoréLeads trending among Pan-Africanist communities. By prioritizing African solutions to African problems, Traoré seeks to position the continent as a global player free from external control. The reactions from African nations, the diaspora, and global powers. African nations. Traoré's leadership has sparked a mix of admiration and apprehension across Africa. The AES, comprising Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, has been hailed as a bold step toward regional autonomy, with leaders like Mali's Colonel Assimi Goïta and Niger's General Abdourahmane Tiani endorsing Traoré's vision. Posts on X describe the AES as Africa's answer to NATO, reflecting enthusiasm for its anti-imperialist stance. However, Western-aligned nations like Ivory Coast and Senegal have expressed concerns, with Ivory Coast accused of hosting plotters in the April 2025 assassination attempt against Traoré. These tensions highlight a divide between pro-sovereignty and pro-Western African states, with Traoré at the center of this fault line. African diaspora. The African diaspora, particularly in France, the US, and the UK, is deeply divided over Traoré. Supporters view him as a revolutionary hero, organizing rallies like the global demonstrations on April 30, 2025, to protest perceived US and NATO aggression. Social media platforms, including YouTube and X, amplify his speeches, with phrases like "fatherland or death" becoming rallying cries. Conversely, some diaspora groups, particularly in France, have protested Traoré, accusing him of authoritarianism and human rights abuses due to his military rule and crackdowns on dissent. These protests, often covered by Western media, contrast with the widespread online support, where hashtags like #AfricaRising celebrate his leadership. Global powers. Western powers, particularly France and the US, view Traoré as a threat to their influence in the Sahel. France, humiliated by the expulsion of its troops, has faced accusations of supporting destabilization efforts, including the alleged 2025 assassination plot. US officials, including General Langley, have criticized Traoré's pivot to Russia, warning of a new Cold War in Africa. Senator Rand Paul's 2025 remarks about declining US soft power underscore fears of losing ground to Russia and China, who have capitalized on Traoré's openness to non-Western partnerships. Russia, in particular, has embraced Traoré, with his praise for Putin's grain initiative signaling a strategic alignment. This geopolitical contest has made Burkina Faso a flashpoint, with global powers closely monitoring Traoré's next moves. Why many see him as Africa's new revolutionary icon. Traoré's emergence as a revolutionary icon stems from his bold policies, ideological clarity, and resonance with Africa's youth. His expulsion of French troops and nationalization of gold mines echo Sankara's defiance of colonial powers, while his modest lifestyle, foregoing a presidential salary and living simply, mirrors Sankara's asceticism. By erecting a statue of Sankara and quoting his famous lines, such as, "We must dare to invent the future," Traoré has positioned himself as a successor to Burkina Faso's revolutionary legacy, inspiring a generation seeking liberation from neocolonialism. Economically, Traoré's reforms have delivered tangible results. The GDP increase from $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion, coupled with a reduction in unemployment, demonstrates his ability to translate ideology into progress. His focus on local processing has created jobs and reduced reliance on foreign markets, earning praise on X, where users call him the leader Africa needs. His youth, at 37, makes him relatable to Africa's young population, who see him as a break from the old guard of African leaders often tied to Western interests. However, Traoré's critics, particularly in Western media and among some diaspora groups, label him a dictator, pointing to his military rule, suppression of protests, and media restrictions. Allegations of human rights abuses and the lack of a clear timeline for democratic elections fuel these concerns. Despite this, his survival of the 2025 assassination attempt and his ability to rally regional and diaspora support underscore his resilience. For many, Traoré's defiance of global powers, economic achievements, and Pan-Africanist vision cement his status as a revolutionary icon, with the potential to redefine Africa's place in the world.